Hey, welcome back to the How to Podcast series. It's Dave. Hope you're doing well. I want to talk a little bit about downloads and podcast stats and analytics, all of the things that we seem to focus on as podcasters. Most notably when you're a new podcaster, you want to see those numbers. You want to see a response when you put out an episode, right? Yeah, we're doing this to be heard. We want to share a message with the world, and we want to know we're connecting. So we're going to talk about the slippery slope of analytics and downloads and all of that as it relates to podcasting here on the How to Podcast series. Are you ready? All right, here we go. So I want to approach this topic from the position of a listener speaking to a listener. I listen to a lot of podcasts. You're listening to this podcast. So right there, we have something in common. We both listen to podcasts. When you look at your phone, I know when I'm looking at my phone, I listen through Spotify because I love music. I'm a musician, and I love having my podcasts all in one platform. So for me, Spotify is my podcast listening app of choice. So when I go through it, I'm looking through the lens of what I can see on my screen. And I really enjoy how everything's lined up here for me. It really works well. In the bottom right corner of my phone, it says Your Library. I click on it, and I see my liked songs, and I see my new episodes with a little bell, and it's updated daily for me. And in this folder called New Episodes are all of the podcasts that I have subscribed to, or I follow, whatever you want to call that. In future, it might change again. But these are the podcasts that I'm most interested in, and I want to get their latest content. And if you want to do this, you can do this on your phone for the How to Podcast series. Just at the top, when you're looking at any of these podcasts, just look at that little bell and make sure you click on that so that you know you are going to get the most recent episode of the podcast. So there should be a little following box underneath the image for the podcast and a little bell, which will turn green on my phone when I go ahead and follow that podcast. But as I go through the podcast in my new episode folder, these are all the episodes that I haven't heard yet. Now, I can click a little button on the side, it's a little check mark. I click it, and it says marked as played. Now, I just did that to an episode, and I didn't listen to it as I'm talking to you. So, what happens there? Does the host get a notification that I, Dave, just listened to his podcast? Maybe. I'm not sure. So what I want to do is I want to include with today's episode a very in-depth article written by James Cridlin over at podnews.net. And this is like a lesson, a masterclass on everything to do with listens, downloads, and percentages, and there's just so much information here that this is a site that I would say there's a really good information that you can learn from. And if you want to go into deeper detail, go here, link in the show notes to Pod News, and the article's called Understanding Podcast Stats, how to understand your stats as a podcaster. Okay, so everything's going to be included in the show notes. Click it. And give James some love for all of his hard work. He's a great ambassador for podcasters around the world. So take a look at the article when you have a chance. But the one thing that's very interesting is that I have in my folder of new episodes, these are episodes I haven't listened to. And the other thing I can do is I can go and I can click the little down arrow button for each of these episodes and download the episode to my phone. So now I have a copy of the episode on my phone. So I can listen when I'm not connected to the internet, through Wi-Fi, data, whatever. And I need to listen to an episode. I can stream it from my phone to my car and listen to an episode in my car. There's a lot of flexibility just by downloading the episode to my phone. And when I'm done, I can just delete it. That's a download. Okay, now, if I download an episode, that doesn't count as a play because I've only downloaded it. I haven't actually listened to it. And I have episodes on my phone that I've downloaded that I haven't listened to. So when you say to your listening audience, make sure you download this week's episode, That doesn't mean they're actually listening to it. Okay? The other thing is people can listen on their phone. And a long time ago when podcast was new, it was really hard and you had to be a tech guru just to get the file from the computer to your playable device so you could hear it without sitting at your computer. And we've come so far in the history of podcasting that we can just have it on our phone, and it's so easy now for listeners to access our content, which is great. That's what we want. We want to make it easier and easier for everyone to listen to our shows. But it's interesting that there's stats out there that talk about the length of time that counts as a listen. You put a lot of hard work into your podcast. You research it, you record it, you edit, you do all the social media, and you put out a great 30, 40-minute episode, 10-minute episode, and then you find out that a listen counts with only a few seconds worth of time engaged with the audience listening to your podcast to count as an official listen. And you're like, they're only listening to the first few seconds of my show, and that's it? They don't even listen to everything? That's true. That's how the listens are counted. And that's how the information is kept for you. It comes back in your stats. So it's not even that they're listening to the entire show. Keep that in mind. The other thing that I would like to say too is I'm in Canada and I can go out and buy a VPN which would redirect my course, my city where I'm listening from to another place on the planet outside of Canada. And I might appear to be listening in New York State in the US, but I live in Canada. So I can redirect my location to somewhere else in the world, and that is not very helpful for our stats as we look at where people are listening from and wonder, what's going on here? Where are my listeners even living? We can even play with that information, which is, again, not as accurate as we would like. So when I look at this podcast, for example, 79% of my audience are listening in the US, 3% are in Canada, 2% are in the UK, 2% in Mexico, and 1% are in Australia. That's my top 5. So, but really, any one of these countries, any one of these listens could be in some other part of the world through a VPN. Do you see the problem? So if we want to focus our sole intention on the number of people listening and where they are in the world, just understand that the numbers we're looking at are not completely accurate with 100%, but they're a guide. They're something for you to know that you are connecting with your audience. And the big thing I'd say for anyone listening today, when you go in and look at your stats, they should be an indication of the temperature of your podcast. Just like we have a thermometer to check when we have a fever and see what our temperature is, your stats are a thermometer. They will give you the sense of whether or not things are normal or you're running a little bit hot and you need to go get some help. Your podcast needs a little help. That's all it's meant to be, is something that gives you some idea of how you're doing in relation to your competition? No. In relation to everyone else? No. In relation to yourself. You just want to see some sort of progress in your podcast that you're doing better than you did on the last episode, better than you did on your first episode, and all of the things you're doing behind the scenes to grow your audience are working. We've talked about that here on the podcast. Go to Instagram, find the last 5 people who followed your Instagram account and give them a voice DM. That's how you build an audience. Bring on a guest. Connect with another podcaster. Get featured on another show so people get to hear your voice outside of your community and they go, wow, I want to know more about this person. They sound interesting. I'm going to go check out their podcast. That's how we grow our show. It's not throwing money at the wall and seeing if somebody will pay. We can pay somebody to inflate our numbers. We want to have real engagement with people who follow the content of our show. That's how we grow. So my encouragement for everyone listening, as I know you're going to pull out your phone or jump on your computer and check your latest stats coming up this week or today or sometime soon, you're going to be looking to see, how am I doing? I want you to look at how you're doing compared to your last episode. Are you growing? Are you improving? Are you doing your podcast in a better way? Are you connecting in a better way? Are you responding to emails? Are you engaged with your audience? Are you growing your listenership one at a time? Because that's where you're truly going to grow a community. And my encouragement for you is to be aware of your numbers. Understand that they're not perfect. Understand that those countries may not be perfectly exactly correct at all times, but they're an indication. They're a thermometer. And use it as a way to make sure your podcast is healthy. And if you're not sure and you want to talk about your numbers and you want an honest opinion, and maybe we can look at stuff together, there's some people out there that are really shady with their numbers. Some podcasters will actually inflate their numbers to get sponsorships. But what happens there is, with an inflated number of that's not real or accurate, sponsors will sign up and hand money over to be in front of an audience that doesn't exist. And when that audience that doesn't exist doesn't respond to whatever that person is or company is selling, and no one clicks the link and nobody buys the thing that they're advertising, that's not a great experience for any vendor who wants to invest in podcasting. Nobody benefits by pretending or faking their numbers. No one does. You don't, your audience doesn't, and fellow podcasters don't. And I guess if you like holding your cards close to your chest and you don't want to let people know, that's your choice. But if you need some help looking at your stats and just want to understand how to read them better, I would say read the article that's included in today's episode. James Cridland he just cares about podcasters. So I would encourage you to go read that and study it. If you have questions, I'd love to help you with it. But do that work behind the scenes and just understand that your stats are a thermometer. They're not the litmus test of whether or not your podcast is successful. The only way that you'll know if your podcast is a success is if you do your best and people listen. And the only way you can really check is look at your stats. But don't stare at them. Don't obsess. Focus on your next episode and how you can make it better than what you did last time. And by doing that and engaging with your audience, you will grow your show. It's going to happen. It's impossible for it not to grow. If you are a real human being speaking to another real human being, sharing life, giving back, giving content that helps people, people will subscribe and follow. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. And I will help you any way that I can to see your podcast grow, because you have a message for the world. And no one should stand between you and your audience, not even your stats. It's a thermometer. Use it wisely. Check out howtopodcast.ca for more. I would love to connect with you as we go into the summer months of 2023. If you need any help, let me know. And as well, check out the article again from James Cridland at podnews.net, included in the show notes for more on reading and understanding your stats. Have a great day. We'll talk to you soon on the next one. Take care.